Okay, good evening, everyone. I will call the Dublin City Council meeting of Monday, March the 11th back to order. And I notice we have a couple of scouts in the audience. Could you two gentlemen step up here real quick for me? You are in big trouble. Come on up. What's your name? What is it? Cruz Kamene?
And Braxton Kamene.
Braxton Kamene. What brings you guys in?
We are working on the communications merit badge.
Oh, we do not communicate very well here. This is not the place to come to learn communication. Okay, would you guys be kind enough to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Everyone please stand. Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. Where do you go to school? Both of you, Kaufman? Great. Well, welcome. I hope you enjoy your time here at our meeting. If you sneak out, I will not call you out. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it. Okay, we're at the citizen comment section of the agenda, and I don't have anybody that has signed in. However, if you raise your hand and tell me you want to come up and talk about whatever is on your mind, you get up to at least 5 minutes, and we will listen to anything that you have to say. I don't see any hands, so we will move on to the consent agenda. There are 2 items on the consent agenda. I make a motion that, or does any member of council wish to remove either of those two items? Then I make a motion that we approve the 2 items on the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Jen?
Yes.
Ms. DeRosa?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose-Groom?
Yes.
Introduction and first reading of ordinances, ordinance 06-19. Jenny?
Amending the annual appropriations for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019.
I will introduce it. Matthew?
Good evening, members of council. I'm here tonight with ordinance 06-19. A memo detailing the appropriations was included in your packet, and I stand ready for any questions.
Any questions from council? Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Under section, I think it is the very first section, the advance to the Bridge Street Fund, the $1.4 million. Can you get a little more background on why we're doing this? And
Sure. So basically, we just neglected to make the advance in the operating budget last year. So we're going back and putting that in. We budgeted for the expenditure, but we didn't budget the advance. Now we have to do that. It's possible, as the memo outlines, that service payment revenue will come in during the year. That will mean that the advance ultimately won't be necessary. But at this point in time, we need to make that happen so that we can make the payment to the schools.
so is that what happened last year? We made the advance, the service payments came in, and then is the money returned to the general fund, or
it will be? There's no service payment revenue last year, so we made an advance last year as well. Eventually, when the service payment revenue does begin to come in, this advance may not be necessary.
But I thought it was what 1.7 million every year.
1.5.
1.5. Thank you very much. Every year, agreed to amount. Why? Well, I'm confused about why it's not coming in a little bit. Thank you.
So the minimum service payment guarantee first goes. So you're right. The dollar amount was correct. We use that to pay the debt service on the parking garages and the street network associated with Bridge Park. What we would expect over time is that as property values increase and we start to see those service payments coming in, we just didn't last year because of the construction schedule and when the county actually came out and put a value on the properties. We would expect that minimum service payment becomes the floor, and what we actually collect is something more than that, in which case it can be used not only to retire the debt service, but it can also go to fund these payments to the school district, and as you're aware, any other public improvements that we have identified in the TIF ordinances for Bridge Park.
So this doesn't change the operating income, the annual budget at all, the operating budget, this advance change. You were saying this was reflected, if I heard you, in the budget. What we didn't do is transfer money from the fund, or do I misunderstand that?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Angel.
If we have to do the entire advance, it will result in this amount increasing our general fund expenditures. It was originally budgeted for, so when we have an advance that is funding a fund, so we have about 50 different funds, and each of those has a fund balance. So at the beginning of the year, or at the end of the year, when we ask council to appropriate funds for the upcoming year, we have to make sure that any the revenues coming in are sufficient to meet the expenditures that have been budgeted for. So within the Bridge Street Fund itself, we did budget for the payments to the school district. So it was accounted for properly in there. But But the balancing act, because that fund really doesn't have a dedicated revenue stream at this point in time, necessitates an advance from the general fund in order to make that fund stay whole, if that makes sense. So you'll oftentimes see that when we're talking about advances, you'll actually see an appropriation in two different places. You'll see it an appropriation to the general fund account that's advancing it, and you'll also see an advance in the fund that's receiving it. So our hope is that we won't actually need to advance all of this money. Again, we'll know more as the service payment revenues come in as well.
Angel, was there a date tied to the guaranteed minimum service payment on those Bridge Park valuations?
Well, their minimum service payment guarantee actually began last year, and they made their payment, so we used that and applied it towards the debt service. So they made their required minimum service
We
payment
don't use any of
guarantee.
those funds to, none of those funds are allocated towards the school payment?
Not right now. If you recall back to a couple of debt presentations that we had, we showed the Bridge Park debt structure. And in the first, I want to say 10 years, that minimum service payment guarantee was not enough to cover in its entirety the debt service on the garage and the parking, on the parking garages and the streets. But in the latter years, it is sufficient to cover it. So when you take into account the revenue over the entire period, it essentially covers all of the debt service. So again, that would just act as a floor. We would expect that the property will be valued at something higher than that and generate the revenues.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I'm trying to get an end for John here, so I'm multitasking. Thank you. The reforestation fund here. It looks like. I'm sorry, my thing was not. It looks like we have a beginning balance of 282, and we're going to increase that to 458. But actual expenditures have not really occurred. So maybe I'm misunderstanding that. Are we expecting those expenditures in this year? Is that it?
We are expecting the 22,000 in 2019, correct? But that revenue that's the 2018 line there. So the 2018 balance was 282. We added 198,000 last year. We had a purchase order for 22,000 that we haven't yet paid out, that we expect to pay out in 2019, leaving a fund balance of 458,000.
So what are we requesting here then?
We're requesting the 458.83 be appropriated in 19.
And was that also not done last year? And is it the same situation here?
No,
or?
this is a little bit different because we don't know when revenues are going to come in or the expenses. This is one that we come through. It's not technically kept in a separate fund. It's just a separate account that we track separately within our general fund. So at the end of every year, we look to see what essentially our ending balance was in this particular account, and then we come to council and reappropriate it. If, in theory, we could make a best guess when we prepare the operating budget, and let's say we would have said, okay, we're going to appropriate $300,000, you know, it would have left another $158,000 that as of December 31st was accounted for in that fund, but we just do one clean entry for the entire balance, usually at the beginning part of each year. So this isn't necessarily something that we overlooked. This is just simply, we come back each year and appropriate the exact dollar amount that has been maintained for this purpose.
So there's a heck of a balance there that we have not spent over the years, and we keep increasing that fund. We're shaking our heads. So why are we increasing, if we're spending 22 and we have 282, why are we adding another 100? I'm just.
Well, yeah, this gets added by virtue of when somebody makes a fee in lieu of payment. So we don't really have any, we as in finance or even Parks and Rec doesn't necessarily have any preconceived notion of what we're going to bring in each year. It's a result of development and what the fees are that are associated if they're not contributing to the parkland. And then the expenses, where we have reforestation, then we utilize those funds. So we don't really bank on any revenue coming into that. This is just purely this is what's come in because of development and what we've spent those funds on.
I mean, it's a fund where those dollars are parked for that purpose and fenced for that purpose. We can spend against that if we anticipate the need to do that in the spring or fall. Some of the things we talked about at retreat relative to some of our reforestation could potentially come out of this, and we could step up our activity there. That's where that would come from. Similarly, we have a cemetery fund of about over $1 million, perpetual maintenance fund. I mean, I'll be coming to you later this year about tapping some of that funding for restoration of tombstones and things as an example, but that's money that's corralled for that purpose, and we would expend that. So we want to make sure whatever's supposed to be there is there, which
Great.
is what this
and,
is about.
And again, that's a couple of things that we talked about at the retreat. It sounds like we have sufficient dollars to.
And that's a lot of trees to plant in a year, which we
That's a lot of trees to
try
plant.
to do. So.
But that's good news. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Yeah, but we're 20-some years into our original forestation program, so it's wonderful that we're happening to have these funds right now.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And then do the planning to keep this town really looking sharp, that green belt look. It's great.
Angel, a couple questions. So do we have a specific project for these funds to be expended on if we're going to be transferring these monies out?
I don't know that I'm aware of a specific project, but as Dana mentioned, some of the projects that were discussed during council's retreat, those would be more than eligible. There's a couple of nuances we need to work out, but we would look to these funds to provide reforestation throughout the city.
So why would we transfer the funds out prior to having a project to expense them towards?
So that they're there when a project is identified and we can just run with it. There's really no harm in that they can't be spent on anything else. So certainly if council would want to see the plan of action as to how these funds would be spent, we could bring that back to council for review. Right.
So that's also funding that's required to be in that fund because that's what you that's the reason why it's collected. So I think we have a responsibility to account for that, those dollars coming into that fund. So while there may not be an action plan to expend all of that, it needs to be, I use the word in my layperson's, parked there because that's where it's intended to be. So we need to make sure we're accounting for where it's supposed to go.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes, this just lays the groundwork so that when a plan has been identified or a certain area has been identified, whoever is handling that internally can just move forward with it as opposed to then us coming to council and getting an appropriation.
Okay, but the balance of our appropriations are primarily due to a specific event, a payment that's due, change order on a project. Most of these other transfers are in response to an action.
Yes.
This one is kind of an outlier it's not in response to anything.
Correct.
It's more of a...
Yeah, we just come in the first part of each year and appropriate the balance that was there at year end.
So my second question was regarding Section 4. It talks about the change order of $135,000 for change order number 1 in historic Dublin Columbus Metropolitan Library Street project. And is this part of that contract that we entered into with the contractor? I know we did for the garage and the bridge, and I thought it was also for this portion where they were part of the design team and we worked with them closely along the way.
Yes, from a funding perspective, our contract with Turner, our guaranteed maximum price contract with Turner, comprises 3 separate projects, and that includes the garage, the street network, and the grounds of remembrance. So it's important to note that overall, we are still within budget. We've had the street project went over budget. The grounds of remembrance and garage portion are currently under budget. So overall, we're still within budget, but we still need to accomplish this transaction. Following up on your question, or getting to your question, these items that are listed, this total amount is covering several items. As is customary with construction projects, there's often unforeseen conditions that are encountered. So all of these items that are included in this change order, listed for this change order, were all unforeseen conditions that are not covered by the guaranteed maximum price contract provision.
There was one that jumped off the page at me, and it was talked about adjustments and elevations at High and North Street on the east side. Many of these I can see not knowing where a storm drain was or perhaps what kind of isolation valve was on water. But so I had some questions about the elevations at High and North Street on the east side.
The specifics of that one.
Do we know any, and maybe come back.
Off the top of your head,
on
yeah,
that, 'cause
I'll
I
need
know
to
we're
follow
first.
up on the details associated with that one.
Okay.
But for each of these change orders, we do go through the analysis of, is this covered by the guaranteed maximum price, or is this something that the contractor could not have foreseen at the time of contract?
Okay. Great, thank you.
You know, what's interesting is, and some of you on the committee, I think, will remember this. Remember, we had a budget, and we were going to do 161 improvements, and then we were going to try to do Franz Road. And we didn't have enough money at the time, and we just chose amongst us, and I think it was approved by council, to do the 161 entry corridor. But now it appears that with some planning, we can now move on to Franz Road and then do this thing we were talking about at the retreat about, and we need a master plan from our landscape architect about reforestation of the rest of the town on the major thoroughfares. So this is really good news. So hopefully you guys will put together a program and we can review it.
So could I ask, when you bring this back for second reading, that you kind of put a summary together to tell us what this does to the general fund, to the operating sort of net? You had a nice schedule in there that showed the reforestation, a similar schedule that shows us the impact of these to the general fund, to the operating, to the capital fund. Could you? That would be great.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, we will see you back on that on March the 18th. Ordinance 07-19, Jenny?
Vacating 0.013 acres, more or less, of public right-of-way in the city of Dublin, county of Franklin, state of Ohio, 19 South Riverview Street.
I'll introduce it. Megan?
Good evening, members of council. A representative of the property owner at 19 South Riverview Street contacted staff desiring to address an existing encroachment of a portion of their residential garage and driveway onto city land prior to potentially selling the property. After researching the matter and extensive discussions with the property owner, it's likely that the encroachment existed prior to the city taking ownership of the land in 1986. Staff determined that vacating this public right-of-way will not interfere with the public use and safety of the public right-of-way. The garage and drive have existed there for quite some time with no issue. If approved, following vacation, the area would be transferred to 19 Riverview LLC, the property owner, and combined with a property adjacent to this vacated area that 19 Riverview owns directly to the south. Staff recommends approval of this ordinance at the second reading, public hearing on March 25th.
Any questions from council? Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Sorry. So I just wanted to verify that we do have an approved building permit on file, that this went through the approval process and did receive the approval. Yes. And the difference there was probably likely in the transfer when we received this from Franklin County, and the maps that we had as a small village didn't completely line up.
That's the best that we can surmise based on our research and as outlined in the memo, yes.
And how far is the encroachment?
So at the widest point, the encroachment is 2.3 feet into our land, and at the narrowest point, it goes down to 1.2 feet.
So it's a narrow encroachment, but a narrow encroachment.
Very, very small, but it's important for the property owner to be able to move it.
And we have on file an approved building permit.
Yes, we do.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you back on that on March the 18th. Thanks, Megan. Ordinance 08-19, Jenny?
Authorizing the conveyance of certain real property and the provision of certain incentives to The Ohio State University to induce it to establish a comprehensive ambulatory medical facility within the city, and authorizing the execution of a real estate purchase and sale contract, a property reconveyance escrow agreement, and an economic development agreement.
Hang on just a
Thanks.
second.
I need to interrupt for just a moment. As my colleagues are aware, in order to ensure that there's no appearance of a conflict of interest, I need to recuse myself and step away from the entirety of the OSU EDA discussion, and I plan to abstain at the time of vote on April 8th. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. We'll come get you. Dana?
I'm going to hand it right over to Donna so we don't waste time. Donna?
Thank you, Dana. Good evening, members of council. Tonight, we're pleased to present a proposed economic development agreement between the city and Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. By way of background for this proposal, in February 2016, Council authorized the purchase of approximately 79 acres, which you'll see outlined in blue, on Shire Rings Road, at a total cost of approximately $79,000 per acre. And subsequently, in September 2018, Council authorized the acquisition of 3 adjoining parcels, which are outlined in yellow, totaling approximately 28.84 acres along Eiderman Road at a cost of approximately $147,000 per acre. The strategy in amassing approximately 100 acres in this location was to leverage the property for economic development opportunities and increase the likelihood of a broader development strategy due to the highly visible frontage along State Route 33 and accessible frontage along Eiderman Road within the West Innovation District. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. This is not the slide. It's showing that and not this. Okay. All right. All right. I think we're on track. Here we go. Here you see a broad overview of the site for the project, which is 34 acres that is proposed development on the portion of the site, and it's anticipated to proceed in 2 phases. Let's see if we can. It's not. I'm sorry. I apologize. So let's go. Yeah. Excuse us. Okay, here we go. As I was saying, thanks. The Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center has proposed a development on a portion of the site which is anticipated to progress in 2 phases. The first phase will include a comprehensive ambulatory medical facility not less than 225,000 square feet in size to support a wide range of outpatient services, medical and surgical specialty clinics, testing and treatment services, and 4 ambulatory surgical operating rooms. OSU expects to proceed with the second phase project to construct additional medical facilities on the property, the scope and timing for which remain undefined at this time. Here you see a broad overview of the site for the project, which is anticipated to total 34 acres in size. Please note this roadway and site configuration is conceptual at this time, as the design of the roadway is not complete and a survey has not yet been done to determine the actual parcel for the project. The character of the roadway is envisioned to be similar to Emerald Parkway and effectively opens up this area for development as planned. Moving the roadway away from the neighborhood is intended to create a buffer for residents to the south, and the restrictive covenants that would be placed in this particular area, which I'll talk about a little bit later, support modest scale development, which will be important for a transition to the neighborhood. In terms of land and infrastructure costs, OSU will be responsible for a pro rata share of the infrastructure improvements necessary to support the project. This is equal to 32.5% of the actual cost, which includes design, associated right-of-way land acquisition necessary for the realignment of Shire Rings Road, utility relocation, and construction of the public improvements as shown here in the table. Additionally, OSU will contribute up to $1,250,000 toward the Avery Road, Shire Rings Road roundabout project. In addition to providing world-class medical services for the community, it is expected that the OSU project will bring substantial economic and social benefits to Dublin, including the creation of approximately 350 new jobs with a projected payroll in excess of $50 million annually within the first 10 years of operation of the project, and the retention of approximately 60 existing full-time equivalent jobs totaling roughly $6 million in annual payroll. The proposed incentive is a 15% performance incentive for 10 years on net new withholdings and is capped at a total of $1.1 million regardless of the calendar year in which the threshold is reached. The base withholdings, as you'll see there, represents the estimated annual payroll withholding taxes which will be collected in any given year in respect of OSU's existing employees currently located within Dublin. The city projects to invest roughly $16 million over a 3-year period on roadway and infrastructure improvements in support of the project and promote economic development in the West Innovation District. OSU's net payroll alone is estimated at $7.6 million, and we anticipate the city's investment, along with OSU's, will generate the interest of others seeking access to the growing business ecosystem in Dublin. On this slide, I'd like to point out that this is a conceptual image, and it's being used to illustrate the proposal that future development and uses to the south of the project in the hashed area that you'll see there south of the site will be limited to 30 feet in height, and that all the parcels adjacent to the project site prohibit patient care services directly competitive with patient care services provided by OSU. The city has requested OSU provide a comprehensive list of those services. Also, OSU shall have limited right of first offer on the adjoining parcel to the east of the project, which you'll see labeled Area A in blue through October 1st of 2024, and the adjoining parcel directly southeast, which is Area B, highlighted in green, beginning October 1st, 2024, and through October 1st, 2026. As with any proposed project, those brought forward by OSU shall be fully vetted through a public review process and must obtain all development approvals required by the Dublin codified ordinances. We have built milestones into the agreement and set the closing date to be late enough in the process to ensure confidence that the project is moving forward expeditiously. If the targets are not being achieved, the city is not obligated to convey the property. I'd like to note to Council that a slight change has been made to this slide since it was sent to you in your information packet. And to clarify, the closing is scheduled to occur in May of 2020. If OSU has not met the deadlines outlined in the agreement prior to closing, Dublin does not have to convey the property. And after conveyance, if OSU has not applied for and received a foundation-only permit and/or building permit, and work pursuant to that permit is not commenced on or before January 1st, 2021, OSU must reconvey the property to Dublin. This slide shows you a proposed schedule and target dates that will be further defined as design for the roadway and infrastructure improvements is completed. Regarding the building of Phase 1 itself, the project teams have discussed pursuing a PUD process, which is a 3-step process that will likely take approximately 9 months. And as part of that process, OSU and the City of Dublin, individually and in partnership, will hold public workshops to present information and gather feedback, allowing multiple opportunities for public engagement at critical junctures of the project review. And with that, I'd like to ask Council to join me in welcoming Ohio State University representatives, Dan Like, Executive Director of Ambulatory Services, and Keith Myers, Vice President, Planning and Real Estate, to give a brief overview of the project objectives.
Welcome. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. It's a very exciting day. Woke up this morning, said the day is finally here. Then the sun came out, and then it got over 45, and I mean, what could be better than that, which seems like it's been about 6 months since we've had those things happen. But it really is great to be here, and certainly welcome the opportunity to share a little bit about this exciting project and answer any questions you may have. And my colleague Keith Myers here behind me, he'll be happy to answer any tough questions that you may have. Hey, this works.
There you go.
So a little bit of background, why Dublin? Dublin, I think we all know why Dublin is so special to us. And in our strategic planning process of the Ohio State University and its Wexner Medical Center, just reiterated what we already knew about it in terms of it's so vibrant, it's growing, and it's impressive. It's a unique community. And it was an objective analysis that we went through to prioritize all of the communities around the greater Columbus area, and it's no surprise, Dublin, rose to the top of that list. It's been on the top of our list for a number of years, actually, and for various reasons. Maybe it's taken a little bit of time to get to this point. And I will say the second bullet up there, it's really because of the leadership of the city and the council that made this really possible to be here today in the acquisition of the parcels that Donna just went over right on 33 and off of Shire Rings Road. There's 30-plus acres in Dublin that's accessible and visible in 2019 is not really that easy to come by. So we've looked a long time for land, and I think Dana and team knows that, and I think it's exciting to actually have a solution in hand. My own personal connection, I moved as a family in 1982 to the village of Dublin. I think soon after that it became a city, and I lived actually right down the road in Hemingway Village. Went to Dublin Middle School, and now I still live in Dublin. I have a son that goes to Dublin Jerome, a daughter that goes to Dublin Grizel. So I personally know what makes this city unique. And one of the things that I've been asked about this particular site, because it's across the street from Dublin Methodist, is about related to that. And do we already have enough health care, and what about being right across the street? I think that's one of the things that makes Dublin unique. It's the quality of choices we have, the quality of education, the quality of housing, the quality of our parks, the quality of our health care. And so as I see this, does that mean like I'm over time?
You're good.
It's like the Academy Awards. Thank you. And I just see that this is a continued investment and another quality choice for the community. And it just so happened to be across the street, again, from Dublin Methodist. Again, we've looked at many other properties, for a number of years. So, our current situation in Dublin, and this is painful for me because I live in the city, and I don't think you'd really know that Dublin has 60,000 square feet of Ohio State medical space in its community. It's fragmented. It's not branded very well. It's a combination of leased facilities as well as a couple of owned facilities. It's not the best situation for us. So, that went in part of our reasoning for prioritizing this community was really about we have services that we're already offering here, but we could do much better than that. It's fragmented. You can, bounce people around to other facilities for care. And there's services that we don't offer in this community that we should offer to provide comprehensive continuity of care for our populations. So the services that we do have limited access. They're, out of space. tough to get into some of the services. Now we'll continue to work on extending hours and try to make the space work harder, but we really have limited ability without a new facility. So really, as we approach this opportunity, these are the strategic objectives of this project. To create an outpatient care center that has a comprehensive mix of highly accessible programs geared towards keeping the population well. And so ambulatory is defined as things outside of the hospital, outside or short of inpatient care, hospitalization. So really it's about making significant investment, and I'll get into some of the services on the next slide. Clearly, we look for opportunities to provide value to the city in this venture. The wonderful schools and employers and residents through these enhanced service offerings. The unique thing about Ohio State is it's part of a wonderful university, and so we're not just talking about healthcare services here. We're an academic medical center, which means we have a tripartite mission of teaching and research and healthcare. So that's critical, and I think we have the ability to leverage those offerings both on the education side as well as the research side that create some unique opportunities for us to work together. Clearly, as Donna mentioned and showed the payroll projections, we create jobs, and I think frankly, that's my most exciting thing. I enjoy getting involved in the design process of these new facilities, but I get the most excitement when we're talking about leadership continuity, succession planning, staffing, and really trying to recruit the best and brightest to these facilities. And oftentimes we hire people, from the community where people, reside. And so I have to imagine that there'll be a lot of City of Dublin residents that will become employees of this facility. As I stated, really to consolidate our multiple facilities in one location, which eliminates operational redundancies that's currently present. You operate multiple facilities, you have multiple managers, you have multiple registration, scheduling, those types of things. It's just not seamless, and it's not cost effective. And like I said, first and foremost, it's not really the best in terms of patient care. So our current services are shown on the left part of the slide, roughly in 5 different facilities that make up about 60,000 square feet. We have primary care, although it's a full practice. Again, I think we have opportunities to expand hours and offer some walk-in services, but we're limited by space. We have limited internal medicine specialties such as like cardiology, endocrinology, gastroenterology, but again, limited by space. Small ear, nose, and throat practice, an ophthalmology practice on Post Road. We have orthopedics and sports medicine there in Stone Ridge Lane, an endoscopy suite. We have a small rehab program connected with our ortho and sports, and then some ancillary services like lab and imaging. In the imaging facility is an leased facility, and we have aging equipment that needs to be addressed. The future is really to have a comprehensive campus of ambulatory operations, expanding all of the services to the left, but offering more. So we certainly want to significantly invest into primary care access, but we also want to invest into immediate care options like walk-in care and urgent care, so you don't need an appointment. We want to invest in women's health services like obstetrics and gynecology, make a significant investment in behavioral and mental health services, which is so vital and important for us to continue to invest in. It's part of the total mind and body well-being. Offer additional surgery and internal medicine specialty clinics. Again, expand on the ones that we have, but offer additional ones. We don't currently offer ambulatory surgery, so outpatient surgery, same day, treated and release services. We do have an endoscopy center, colonoscopies, and things like that, but if we're talking about eye surgeries and other surgeries that can be done in an ambulatory basis, that's what we're really, interested in growing there. And, certainly community and education space. I think this is an opportunity to work together to see where there might be needs, where we can offer some community and education, some gathering space. Maybe there's some unique partnership opportunities there. And why 34 acres? It's also to allow us the ability to grow as the community continues to grow. So in summary, the community benefit, I stated in my opening comments, I just think it's really an additional choice and improved access for quality healthcare services. I don't know if there's such a thing as having too much access to healthcare services. That's something that we all, I think, could enjoy. Oftentimes in many different areas, it's tough to get in to see different specialties and doctors. The wait times are too long in some areas. So, that's how we prioritize many of our services. What are some of the services that are tough to get into? And really shrinking that time, that we call it lag days, from the time you request the appointment to the time the actual appointment is made, shrinking that down to a level that is acceptable and hopefully exceptional. Job creation, spoke about that. Again, I think that there's education and research opportunities that we have across the university and area businesses and centers and schools. And lastly, I think this is important. Ohio State University is obviously massive, and I've worked there a long time, since November of 2000. And so, I've developed a lot of relationships across campus and made it smaller than it is, and that's so important. But knowing who to go to work on opportunities when you have an idea is like more than half the battle, right? If you're from the outside, and there are already collaborations between the city and Ohio State and different connection points, and we're not intended to break those connection points. But one thing that this will provide is really we'll have a leadership position for this campus that will really be a face, and one of the main responsibilities is to be that relationship manager and that conduit with the city, with the employers, with the schools, to help navigate the complex Ohio State University, which I think is really important. You wouldn't even know sometimes who to go to. Well, we want to make that easier for you. If you don't know who to go to, we will provide that point of contact to facilitate those opportunities. So with that, excited about this opportunity, and I will welcome any easy questions and difficult questions for Keith.
Okay. Mr. Myers, did you want to say anything, or are you just going to go on his coattails?
I think I'll ride that.
All right. Fair enough. I had a couple of questions, and I don't know whether they're going to be directed at you, Dan, or maybe Donna, or a combination of the two. I am a proud graduate of the Ohio State University. I'm a Buckeye. I think this is an incredibly exciting project, a great opportunity. I think it'll bring a lot of, as you said, a lot of services to our community, and partnering with Ohio State is going to be a fantastic thing for us to do. I can tell you I do have a concern with part of the agreement, and I just wanted to discuss it, and maybe we can get answers back or further flesh out, or you can explain to me why I shouldn't be concerned. Donna, could you put up the picture that has the colored parcels A, B, C, D, and E, and then it has, I don't remember which slide it was, that one right there. Okay, so my concern is this idea of these restrictive covenants. And the first one that says height restrictions on parcels not to exceed, I can understand that. I don't have a problem with that. The entirety of my concerns come down to the next 6 sentences in this agreement. And I'll tell you why. And it's interesting that you said, when you mentioned that the Dublin Methodist Hospital was across the street, and that quality of choices, I think, were the words that you had used, is a valuable thing. And it's bullet point number 2 in the restrictive covenants that causes me concern. And it says, and these are prohibitions, as I understand it, that will be placed on the city's land that will then run with the land forever. And it says that it will prohibit on any patient care services on parcels A, B, C, D, and E directly competitive with patient care services provided by OSU. So the way that I read that, and I want to be corrected if I am wrong, is that on the 4 remaining parcels that are owned by the city, we could not sell to someone to come in and to construct a facility that competes or provides any patient care services that are also provided by OSU.
Correct.
Is that right?
Did you want to make a comment first, or you want me to lean in on that one?
Okay.
No,
well, maybe,
no, you can go.
Maybe,
Go
let
ahead.
me get through my bullet points,
Yeah,
and then
sure,
you can
sure.
address them. So my concerns are, and further on down in the last sentence, it says, to facilitate implementation of this clause, OSU will submit a list of patient care services that are provided by OSU on the date of the occupancy, and will provide an updated list on an annual basis only in the event of any service changes. So the way that I read that, and if you could just sort of comment and correct me again if I'm wrong. First, it just says provided by OSU. It does not define this facility. It just says provided by OSU. So that would, in my mind, include anything provided downtown or New Albany or any other. For example, if you had an optical surgery facility in New Albany, that would be included with what would be considered competitive that we could not put on any of these 4 parcels. So if you could comment on that. And then also the updating of what that list of, the term patient care services is not defined anywhere in the agreement. And as you indicated on your slide, it can include things as large as mental health services, women's health services. I would imagine as you, by evolving into the suburbs and the outreach that you're going through now, you're providing a medical care services is expanding. So I'm trying to think 10 years from now, if we were to allow a building of medical professionals that came in to your west on our, which are, 2 of these are the most visible parcels that are out there other than the one OSU would be on, 2 very visible parcels which were, as Donna indicated, were leveraged for the, leveraging property for economic opportunities. What if we put a building on there and a group of doctors came in and provided a service, and in 10 years, Ohio State starts to provide that service? What would happen then?
Okay. Well, I can address maybe the first, one of your first questions
Sure.
was related.
And I'm sorry, that wasn't very linear the way I did that,
Yeah.
so I'll try to help you remember them.
Yeah, I think one of your questions related to the services offered if we offered them anywhere. You know, I'm pretty certain, and look to our city administration to confirm this, that it was related specifically to the service that would be offered on the parcel that we're acquiring.
That was the intent, yes.
Yeah.
So we could get that language in there, right?
If it doesn't state that, that was the intent.
Understood. And does that mean phase 1 and the potential phase 2?
Well, the list, you know, that we talked about, obviously updating annually, I guess, you know, would include services that we could potentially offer on that parcel as it's currently written. You're correct in that statement. When we went back and forth on that, we tried to not want to create an onerous administrative process of going back and forth. But again, I'm okay with an annual update to that list, or however we want to handle that. But the intent, you know, was to not have immediately adjacent services that we're offering on that site, you know, competitive with our services.
So if you're in the healthcare industry at all, even anything that smells like healthcare, you're not going to come out and look to us to be able to develop on these sites.
Well, again, I think we'll be more specific in terms of the list of services. And so, I mean, we talked about, you know, complementary services that, you know, such as, you know, dentistry and things that we won't, you know, offer that on this particular site. Also, you know, we have community collaborators in some areas in terms of healthcare services. Certainly open to including that kind of language too, of approval of services if we desire to have additional primary care offerings, and that is in complement to our services. Those kinds of things could be incorporated as well. But I guess our you know, this is obviously a significant investment on the city's part, significant investment on the Ohio State University's part, and clearly it's just an opportunity to try to protect that investment as we grow. as we quadruple the size of our investment in services and grow. That's why the language is. It doesn't mean, I know you talked about quality health care choice. Obviously that's true. We do want to protect our investment, and that's what I think what that clause was trying to get at.
And I got to tell you again, and I will repeat. I like everything about this project. I don't like this language because I would say the only reason that this limitation is being put on us is because we, as the city government, under the city manager's direction, purchased this land in the first place for the reason of leveraging property for economic opportunities, of which we don't know today what those are going to be. We didn't know you were going to be our opportunity. And so what if Dublin Methodist would have required similar language from us in some kind of a way, and we wouldn't be able to put, you're competing with them. So I'm really struggling with that because I think that had we not been, I guess this body and the administration been forward thinking and purchasing all this land, you wouldn't be able to place that restriction on it. If we only bought the parcel you're buying, you would have, the previous owners would have these pieces of property that they could sell and they wouldn't have to worry about a restrictive covenant. The only reason we are going to have to worry about it is because we were investing. And now I feel like we're maybe not protecting our investment. And that's just a little bit, again, on the frustrating side. It seems as though our purchasing this ahead of time has kind of backfired on us here. Because now we haven't sold all of it. We've sold a portion of it, and we're preventing, and again, with your slide that talked about the services that you intend to provide into the future. So, for example, if you're a group of psychiatrists and you want to build a medical building, I'm not going to come and look to the city of Dublin to build it over here. Because if in next year you guys decide to put on your list of patient care services psychiatric support, what happens to their investment? I wouldn't want to be relying upon the legal system to sort all that out. I'd say this is not attractive land anymore.
Yeah.
Well, we've just now taken this is a big investment for us, 4 big parcels on what is a very visible stretch of roadway. I understand why you picked where you put it. I mean, it's right at the curve. It's exactly where you would want to be. But we have a bunch of land we've invested in that's around there, and I feel like we're kind of at the mercy of every year. Again, if I were anybody that even smelled like healthcare, I would not be looking at buying these parcels because I wouldn't know what would happen if I ended up on the list that Ohio State said, well, we're going to provide that service now. And I guess that idea of not, I mean, I agree with you. The quality of choices is really critically important in healthcare. And just as you guys have evolved into even providing these ambulatory stuff, and you said, I think you don't do surgery in ambulatory centers. What happens in 10 years from now if you do?
Yeah, we do, not just in this community, is what, just to clarify. Yeah.
So I hope you can understand the spirit of my concern. It is, we would have been better off not buying all this land because you guys wouldn't be able to tie it up the way that you would be without having to have invested in it yourselves. And so it does cause me quite a bit of concern. And it's not just OSU because it also says OSU or related entities. And when you look at the definition of related entities, that's anybody you have a contract with. So really, the universe of what could be prohibited is pretty limitless, and the amount of time that prohibition could evolve is also equally limitless in a very big chunk of land that we invested in hoping to encourage that exact kind of thing. So I like 99% of all of this. I'm just really struggling with the idea that we can promote the quality of choices, but then also decide that competition just isn't something that we can tolerate. So anybody else? Well,
so no,
those are my comments.
So Dan, is that something you could work out with the staff and
yeah,
they can get back with us on this because we are really concerned about this issue.
Yeah,
an exclusionary thing like that could really hurt our investment.
Well, I think if the intention of, again, limiting it to the specific parcel was clearly the intention, not just broadly anywhere where we offer services. So clearly there, we can tighten up that language. I think that we are committed, obviously, to wanting to come out of this process and having everybody feel good about that, our investments. So we're committed to work on that with the city, and I'm sure we'll come to a common ground and address this concern.
Great.
I don't know, Keith, if you have any other comments.
Bring it up with staff and for the administration.
Great.
That would be tremendously helpful because we have an enormous investment in this, and we appreciate your partnership. I, too, am a proud graduate of The Ohio State University and Dublin High School, so that runs deep there. But, we do, because of the expenditures and our inability to TIF the university because of its nonprofit status, we have to be able to justify the roadway improvements and other improvements in the area and glean some, financials back from that in order to pay for this infrastructure. And it's really going to, at a minimum, delay and perhaps prevent us from developing these auxiliary parcels if you would choose not to. Our first choice was that you would start building on all of them and make a giant, wonderful place that would be a tremendous amenity to the city. Short of that, we have to make sure that we can pay for the improvements that we're laying the cash out front in order to do. So if those are conversations that you can continue with staff, that sure would be helpful. And I agree with Greg. After reading the whole thing, there were really just a couple sentences that gave me pause.
Yeah, fair.
So, yeah, there's 3 OSU people here, and then it sort of goes downhill to Harvard over here. So. That's all right. She still can be part of the group.
All right.
It's harder to get in now, right? Yes, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I don't know if I could get in.
Yeah.
Oh, they laugh at me.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the partnership. And, as I was thinking about your explanation of the future here, one of the things that's probably changing faster than anything is healthcare, and I applaud your help in doing that, because what we have available to us now in terms of wellness and staying healthy is tremendous. So we so appreciate that. And when I think about the parcels around there, I can begin to imagine the types of partnerships that could actually continue to augment what's happening here, right? Not necessarily competition in some instances, but joint research projects and other things that bring value to the whole thing. So I think there's those opportunities, and when we think about it, I think that's where we begin to get excited too, because who's not going to want to be around that, right? And branch out and create things that, potentially you're not interested in doing, and being able to invite that. But I think the whole development and the forward thinkingness of where the future of healthcare is going, we appreciate that, and looking forward to partnering with you in that.
Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yeah. One thing I didn't state is, a lot of those services oftentimes are offered, within the hospital. And I won't get into the legalities of enrolling those as a hospital-based department, but the bottom line is that it ends up costing the patient more money when you're billing some of these services that are ambulatory as hospital rates. And, the intention of these centers is really to set them up as freestanding departments, which means that they come at a lower cost. So bringing services off the main campus, not enrolling them as hospital-based, is really a recognition on Ohio State's part that we have an obligation to improve the cost of health care. It's out of hand. And so that's the other important point that, I didn't make, not only investing in prevention and wellness, which frankly in the United States healthcare system doesn't pay the bills. It wasn't set up in that way. Reimbursement rates are higher when you're sick, really sick, not well. Things are changing slowly, but certainly you can see a lot of the investments are related to community primary preventative service and delivering them at a lower cost option. So Those are things that we're looking forward to, and completely agree. I think that, again, I think we can definitely tighten up and improve the language and make sure that, there's complementary, uses that really augment, what we're offering. So again, I'll just reiterate our commitment to continue to work collaboratively, with city administration and come into a better place that we all feel good about.
Fantastic. Great. Anything else from council? Danny, got anything to add?
No, I just want to thank the Ohio State University, the Wexner Medical Center for all the effort. And, this is significant for all that the city has planned for out in the West Innovation District area, a great potential anchor tenant out there to continue the momentum that we have in the healthcare area and all the great services you'll provide. And it's been a very good process so far. We appreciate your creativity as we've tried to work the site and the realignment of roads and so forth to accommodate that. Your contribution to the infrastructure is significant. We recognize that as well, and just want to really thank you all for the effort there and what you're proposing to do. It's going to be a terrific facility. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. We really appreciate your time. Gotta go get Christine. You getting her? That we're waiting for. I don't know where John went. He just got up and left, so we'll anxiously wait his return. But I'm assuming he is coming back. Under the other portion of our agenda, informal review, the residences at Tuller Heights. Jenny.
Good evening.
It's all yours.
Members of council, as you mentioned, this is an informal review for the residents at Tuller Heights. As you may recall, and we outlined in your memo, this was in basic plan form before council back in August and tabled in order to allow the applicant to address concerns raised by council at that point. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant so that they can go through their changes, which were included in your materials, and get any feedback that they need from you tonight before they proceed with the formal application. So no action other than your feedback is required tonight.
Thank you. Aaron, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Is there any way we could wait for John?
You can wait. We'll wait.
Just a few moments. Being that there's other
preach
council
to the
members
choir.
absent.
You need at least the choir, right?
Yeah, right. You want me to sing?
You can hum quietly. There he is.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Okay. Aaron Underhill here this evening on behalf of Graziano Construction. My address is at 8000 Walton Parkway in New Albany. We were here in August of last year and presented a plan for the development of the site that you see here up on the screen. It is located just west of Dublin Village Center between Tuller Road and John Shields Parkway, west of and adjacent to Village Parkway. The site is currently owned by an affiliate of Casto, who developed Tuller Flats to the west, and in fact owns the property in between Tuller Flats and this site. We spent the bulk of the fall of last year rolling up our sleeves and doing our best to take really to heart what your comments were. We have met with some council members in the meantime and talked to them about sort of the ideas that we were thinking through. And I will say since the first of the year, we've been in a little bit of a procedural purgatory. We've had a debate about what we were supposed to be filing and when, and I think what we finally decided was, rather than get into the weeds on procedure, which I think we can get caught up on in terms of what sort of plan we're filing, we wanted to get back in front of council and get your thoughts on where we have gone with what I view are significant changes to the plan. The original plan that we presented back in 2018 in August, and frankly even earlier than that, we were before the Planning Commission in May. I was not involved at that time, but this project does date back a couple of years. And the initial thought in designing the site was that we wanted to try to adhere to the Bridge Street Code as much as we could. Obviously, you're always trying to meet code if you can, and the site is in fact zoned for the use. So there was a lot of work put into planning this, and this shows you an orientation with the building fronting along John Shields Parkway, which in and of itself created, I think, many of the issues that were concerns for council. What this plan did not do is show you what was going to be going on to the north of this site, because we are not developing the entirety of the site with this use. We have more to show you in that regard here. If you could see here where I've shown on this slide, we didn't define the balance of the site, what the use would be, what that would look like, and I think it was important to maybe provide a little more context in that regard, so we've attempted to do that with our revisions. The criticisms we heard of the original plan was that the building was too long for John Shields Parkway. We understand that the city made a major investment there. I think the massing of the building maybe didn't lend itself to creating the type of environment that council and staff, for that matter, was looking for. It did, in fact, did not create a lot of opportunity for usable open spaces and gathering areas for pedestrians. And there was some criticism that maybe we hadn't gone far enough with maybe inviting the community to be a part of this project, and we'll talk to that a little bit later. We also were told the architectural design kind of felt like more of the same that has been seen throughout Bridge Street, and here again, that was an effort to meet the code, and I think where we're leaning now is maybe opening ourselves up to other opportunities that don't necessarily meet the letter of the law on the code, but maybe create some more Dublin-like elements here and maybe straddle the line between the two. So here we are again at an informal, but typically the basic plan, you would set the blocks and access points, and basically this is pretty darn simple. We are looking here to create a new public street on the western portion of the site. Here's John Shields Parkway, Village Parkway, and Tuller. You'll note we haven't done too much of a job illustrating here that we're looking to realign the intersection of Tuller and Village Parkway, which I think has long been a goal of the city in its plans. And so this, of course, assumes that. We realize we have some work to do on a development agreement and such if that were to happen. The lone access into the site for vehicles will be here on the west side from this new street, trying to not interrupt here or here along these major street frontages. And we'll show you here momentarily that this will share access for two uses. Here's our new plan. While we haven't exactly turned it on its head, we've certainly pushed it over on its side. We have now oriented the building along Village Parkway, which and then has allowed us to provide these boxes represent townhomes. I think we were at maybe a couple of dozen townhomes, which we envision would be for sale product. We've received some interest from other developers of that sort of product. It would not be Graziano Construction who would be doing that, but we would partner with someone on that. But so these will actually be, say 5 or 6 units a piece, maybe 3 or 4 units here a piece. But what it has done by rotating the building has allowed us to create opportunities for green space, plazas here. This will be a larger green space that's showing as sort of like a paver here. That's to be determined. We're obviously very early in our design. But we think we've solved a lot of the concerns in terms of what was happening along John Shields and protected the investment that you've made there. We do envision, as plans continue to evolve, that we'll have opportunities for pedestrian connections here and along Village Parkway. One of the good things about this, if you'll recall, this is an age-restricted multifamily community that's being proposed. In the long run, I think there's a vision for the Dublin Village Center to be redeveloped, and we think having this project with its front door sort of facing that way will provide some opportunities to integrate these residents into any redevelopment that might occur there, no matter how long away it might be. So here again, relocated the building to the eastern side to address some of the thoughts of council last time. I've gone over some of these already, but one of the things we want to do with the uses inside this building, if you'll recall from our presentation last time, there'll be amenities that are primarily meant to serve the residents of the community here, such as cafes and salons, barbershops, those sorts of things. We have studied that a little more and believe that we can make those opportunities open to the public. And so what we would do, we've obviously just got a box here with some straight lines on a piece of paper, but if we get some guidance tonight that we're on the right track here, we would continue to massage this, and when we come back in front of whether it's you or the Planning Commission, really identify those opportunities to integrate the public with this use. The other thing that we think that this plan accomplishes is with the townhomes here, it provides a product, here again, for sale townhomes that really aren't in the area yet, and creates an opportunity to really fulfill a larger vision that Casto has for the area. Here is their Teller Flats community. They've been talking to some single-family developers about doing an urban single-family product here. As you can see where Graziano's project is, it provides for a transition this way back over to Teller Flats, and really provides a nice mix of uses, we think, and within close proximity to one another. Architecture, obviously, that one I think is something that's in the eye of the beholder, and this was our original proposal. Here again, this was intended to largely adhere to code. I think we only had several maybe 3 or 4 variances or deviations that were needed from code with this plan. We heard you loud and clear. The hard thing to do without knowing what your site plan is to go ahead and invest in architecture. To a large extent at this point. So what we're trying to do is show you, here's again the original design, some maybe aspirational images that we think could maybe provide a more traditional feel. This is not anything that we have done. This is something we've done our research on, but these are elements like with the roof lines and the slopes of the roofs and changing of materials that we think we could make this feel a little bit different than just what the typical code would require. Another aspirational or inspirational architectural image, but we would certainly like to get guidance on where you'd like us to go architecturally, whether it should be more in the form of meeting code, or if there's another direction that you'd like to guide us that may require some deviations but get you the look that in design that you like. I think I got these out of order, so I'm going to go this way. So what we're really looking for tonight is we're frankly at a point contractually with Casto and with hundreds of thousands of dollars and hundreds of man hours invested in the project that we need to know if we're on the right track here. And so I've proposed 3 questions, if we could answer them this evening or get your feedback. I realize everybody's not here tonight, but number 1, does council support the use, which is in fact permitted on the site? Can the new site plan be supported as a general direction for us to proceed, understanding this is high level and we really need to refine some of the things that you've brought up previously, but are we headed in the right direction? And then lastly, where should we go with the architecture in terms of design and adhering to code versus maybe going in a different direction to get you a product that you'll be proud of? So with that being said, I will, yeah. Oh, yeah. Right there?
So I understand you turned the building this way and you also occupy that upper lot that was empty.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so then you also eliminated that other building.
That's right. That's right. That's okay. That concludes my presentation. Happy to hear from you.
Well, no, I think the site plan's improved, and I think we've got enough of the kind of teller units already coming up the slope. And we've heard a lot of feedback from the citizenry that, hey, enough's enough of those particular kind of units. Architecturally, the site plan's rather interesting. We took a field trip, and if you were looking for an architecture that I think we all agreed on was there's some units on Gay Street behind the Bishop's Cathedral.
Right. Is that
Pardon?
That's that picture.
neighborhood launch? Yeah, that's.
Was that a variation? Yeah, I didn't see the masonry on there. I saw the stucco work, but that's the kind of thing I think on a field trip we all agreed was really rather attractive. If we could do something like that, and of course the landscape that went along with that architecture was fairly well detailed and very, very interesting. So, I mean, my comments is that I have no idea about these I guess the one thing you showed us I wouldn't want to see is the one picture that reminds me of a apartment complex that's in here. I know that's sort of a standard unit right now, or standard type of unit that you see all over, but I don't think we're really looking for that.
Do we think, I appreciate those comments, John, are roof lines one of the issues, and does it feel residential, or? I think, if you go back to your one picture here, if you flick this back here, the lower right one with the sort of interesting dormers and things is, I think, more evocative of what I think we'd like to see, that kind of quality. The one above it is what you're seeing in a lot of apartments all the way across America right now, and that's an interesting look, but I don't know if that's the apex look I think we're looking for, But I think that we sort of took a field trip. We all voted on the best architecture we saw. We went to New Albany, and we went to Westerville, and we went over to the Yard, and we went all over and looked at all different kinds of architecture that was being accomplished in our area, and the vote was in that the area behind the cathedral, I think it was Gay Street. Yes,
it's just absolutely
good-looking product.
The best-looking thing Columbus has got going for it. So, I mean, that's what I can help you with, and that's what I think my colleagues that were on this trip sort of agreed with, too.
I don't know that a whole lot has changed for me since last time we were here. My concerns primarily are with the vibrancy and activation of the street network. I would disagree with John a little bit. Even if these interior units were similar to the ones on Gay Street, they're kind of in the interior of the property. If you can go to that other slide that had the layout of both.
Oh, both. Now you're testing me.
Oh, sorry, the other way, sorry. There, right there. These are interior buildings. It would be difficult to engage the street in a meaningful way on the interior buildings. I have some concerns about the access of, are we really living up to the spirit of the vision of Bridge Street? I read through your letter and that you might allow people into the cafe and perhaps the salon on the interior of the building. I don't know that that really reaches the spirit of a walkable, vibrant, urban neighborhood. I think just, to me, it didn't feel like reaching that bar. We didn't see anything about floor elevations and retaining walls in this one that we'd seen previously, but certainly whatever we do, I don't want to have to build retaining walls on this. I think they're really counterproductive in a walkable urban district. Again, the parking is curious for me, even if you're going to have all of these interior units and the access. Really, the block length didn't change much. It just occupied a different block. And we've had some concern that we're, experiencing some of the effects of not having, of having, frankly, too long of a block without interesting things along the way. And if this building's going to be a contiguous building on the entirety of Village Parkway, we're probably not going to get the walkable feel that we're looking for in the district. So I appreciate the filling us in on what the intent is to do with the balance of the real estate. In my opinion, we haven't met the threshold of the intent of the vision. The use, housing a use here, I get that it's a permitted use there, but it has to meet the vision, and I don't think this particular housing does. I would hate to point you in a direction because I'm not certain that you can get there, particularly on the townhome units. But that's certainly, it's certainly a free country, and you have the ability to do that if you so choose. And the third question was on the next slide.
Architecture.
Oh, the architecture. The architecture. I do think the Gay Street is a fantastic design. I don't know that for your larger building, for the giant building, that certainly wouldn't be appropriate. I don't know how you would achieve that, but I would like to see more roof lines. I think we have plenty of flat roofs in the vicinity, and some roof lines would certainly break up the monotony of that. And materials will be of utmost importance. It's not a real secret. I'm not a fan of some of the materials used, so I would like to see some more natural materials introduced into the district because I think they give a better feel of quality. That's what I have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you remind me how long that building is?
Don't know off the top of my head.
I mean,
Jennifer,
since it takes up the majority of the block, which I think is about 400 feet, it would be within that ballpark. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's pretty long.
I had a note like 480. Does that seem right to you?
It's a pretty square block when you're looking at and the maximum.
And that did not change, right? The massing of that building, or?
In general, no. I mean, it's in the neighborhood of what it was before, and. Well, I don't want to.
No. I mean, I think that was one of the challenges is that, I went back and looked, this corner in the Bridge Street corridor, and I think we've talked about this. This is really an entryway into that. And as you said, if future developments happen, this really is sort of a gateway. And the massing turning doesn't really change that feel to me at the corner. We still have a large building. It's just sort of facing in the other direction. And I'm not sure that we've got that street activation, which is so essential to that urban walkable. And I just don't know how you arrive at that without breaking up that building. You could turn it the other way. I just think the size of that is going to create a feel. And I think there would have to be a variance, would there not, for that building of that size to go in there?
We'd have to look at what the waivers would be for that.
I think it would have, because I think that's not, as I recall, I think that exceeded that. And I just think that if without doing that, we could turn it three ways, and I'm just struggling with the fit on the space in terms of getting the green space. The thing that is so interesting about Gay Street, and I too concur that that's nice, is people sit there at lunch and eat their lunch. There's a lovely little courtyard. There's quite trees. The building and the land work together in this urban walkable, which is what we're so trying to do there, in such a fabulous way. It's all of that working together. And I think you'd have to change the massing in order to get that feel. I can't imagine that we could get it without that. And, I don't know, see how it just staying on that for a second, how we could get, courtyards or those type of live, work, play that we would want. And go ahead.
I certainly think, there are opportunities to, I mean, it's difficult on a block drawing, but, to get sort of notches in here in courtyards and make those spaces inviting. I think here again, it kind of goes back to process and what level of detail we're at, and it's difficult to dig into that level of detail. We don't have kind of the basics down yet, but I think there's an opportunity to. I'm not sure we're going to reduce the massing of the building, but can we break it up some? I think we could.
Yeah, and I just think without reducing the massing of the building, I'm struggling with how that's going to fit the character. I've shared that before. I think I still feel that way, and I very much appreciate the comment about using the cafes and activating that. If the folks would have to come through the residence in interior spaces, I'm not sure that's activating the street in the way the live, work, play environment is. An outdoor access, outdoor courtyard. I mean, I think that was the intent. I understood it would have to be sort of an internal access.
Well,
is that what you're saying?
Sure. For instance, right here, we see an opportunity there to create like a gathering space. Whether we could put the cafe in there and make it, so it feels like part of a restaurant or something there on the exterior. Those are all things I think we could look at.
I mean, again, for me, in order to really hit the spirit of the code and the spirit of the activation, I think there would have to be significant things like that. For me personally, because I don't think we've quite arrived at what was in, it's the use in the space. It's the use in the space and the activation. And I'm not sure I can see it from here to say this looks like we've arrived at that. So.
Erin, I had one comment that I forgot to make as I read over my notes. The last thing was on the porte cochere, which is on the interior portion of the building, which is going to certainly be the most active doorway of the building, isn't going to be adjacent to any street. And that's really part of what I was referencing when I was talking about engaging the street network.
Okay.
I agree with my colleague here that I think, we ended up again with a sort of a medical kind of building that you see that we've seen before. It's a big block. And as you said, there's a possibility, and maybe, see, structurally, and not knowing your business as I should or could, the idea of cutting courtyards into it and making it more interesting so it has that gay street appeal, those subspaces that you can stop in that have benches and things, and, maybe that really doesn't fit this use. I don't know. So, but I think that's what we're really shooting for, because when you're running 100 yards plus of building, that's just a huge edifice, and I think there's one on Long Street like that, and it is really rather unattractive. But they didn't break up the facade and drop it back and create those subspaces that are interesting. So I think, without putting any more big money in this, I think if you did a plan view of this thing, and maybe even connected some of these smaller buildings on the bottom, and I don't even know if that's possible in your business. I mean, if that's really functionally correct for utilizing a retirement home. So, what we might be asking for might be an impossibility. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So.
Thanks. Okay, so I am not a planner, not my strong suit. I kind of go more with a gut feel. And this is going to be so simple and takes you kind of right to my level, which is down here. Do you remember watching Sesame Street? And everybody was always in the street. There was always, and the building, and I know they're just sets, I get it. But the idea is the feeling of it, right? That's kind of what I'm trying to get from here, and that's what I'm missing from here. And I don't know if it's the size, I don't know if it's the massing, I don't know if it's maybe reconfiguring the townhomes so that they are more together, so that you can create additional green space for sort of that feeling of people who want to walk through, who want to participate in their environment. And that's kind of what I'm missing. I'm okay with the general use of the space, what it's for. To answer the first question, I get that it's a high-level plan. I just am struggling. I think I'm saying something similar to my colleagues, just in my own kind of Christina way. This isn't a space that I would feel myself being able to kind of walk from the movie theater across the street and want to go sit at the cafe. That maybe there's some tweaks that you can make, some changes you can make to change that feel. And I'm not saying I want to see Big Bird on the corner, but I am saying that I want to feel a part of what's going on there. And I do struggle with it a little bit, because to the west of there is Taller Flats, and I know that that's not all done with trees grown up and that kind of thing, but I kind of struggle. It feels very stark to me. And what I don't want to do is create yet another space at the very end, because it sort of anchors that whole corridor where I don't feel like I want to participate. And I think that's what you guys are all saying, is in terms of the spirit of what Bridge Park is supposed to be, is that urban, walkable. I'm not saying that a version of this couldn't work, So I think that's the two questions, and then the third question is more of the inspirational versus code. I would lean towards that inspirational. I didn't go on the field trip with these guys, but I've been to Gay Street. I think we all know what it looks like. I think that's a great area from which to draw inspiration. I agree. I think the roof lines all along there are very flat. It's kind of monotone and, homogeneic. Did I say that right? Homogeneous. Thank you. So it would be nice to have something a little bit different here, especially sort of on that anchor, on that end, across from the sort of retail that's on the other side of the street. So I think you've hit some things right. I think there's work still that needs to be done.
All right, thank you.
And Denise signed in, but Denise, someone signed in to testify. But that was, do you want it? You can come up and say anything you want to say if you want to. You sure? Okay. Okay, like Christina, I'm not a planner. I sort of listen to the people up here that do know what they're talking about. Can you go to that picture of the architecture that you guys had? Yeah, so the one in the upper right-hand corner.
Yeah.
For me, and I understand that this is, you're trying to make this delicate balance of investing too much time and resources in a project that's never going to get off the ground, while at the same time trying to represent what the project would look like. I understand that difficult balance, so I'm not reading more into this than what you've offered it for. It seems to me that that picture in the upper right-hand corner, you could tell us that was in any community in all of Central Ohio, and we'd say, yeah, I remember seeing that. That's my only reaction to that, So, and I get the one below that kind of looks like the one over by Giant Eagle, Crowell Village. It has that kind of that sort of a courtyardy kind of look to it. I get it. I think that's headed more in the right direction, but the one that looks like it could be anywhere we've driven by 100 times, I guess, isn't maybe all that inspirational. Anything else from council? Go ahead.
On the comment on this page, if we look at the three of them together, the sheer size of the building, which is what you see in the upper left, sort of almost any of those architectures in that size is just going to have this, I guess that's what I'm trying to articulate. The size overtakes the function. If you can't break it up and you can't really think about it in a different way, I don't know how you create that energy when you have the size. Because you can overlap any of these fields on that, and I'm not quite sure how you create that energy. Okay. Thank you.
Any other feedback we want to give? Is that it? Okay. Stand by.
I'm going to come up with something else here.
Anything else, Aaron?
No.
That it? Okay. Anything, Dana, anything else we need to cover if we flesh this out? Jenny, anything else? No. Come on, Denise. Come on up here. Do not want you to feel that you didn't have a chance to speak.
One of the difficulties is trying, and I understand the massing, is when you have seniors, you can't have them going, they're not carriage homes, that we're building. We're building a, independent living community with services and amenities inside the building with, a core center and amenities so that seniors, when they're leaving their homes and they want to be somewhere where they can, have amenities and support services inside the community, that it's hard to break it up, because if you have someone, that eventually needs a walker or a cane or something, that they're not walking outside to go to a meal or to, have activities. So it's, our struggle has been as to how to, it would be great if we're building, a continuum of care where you have, an independent living, a skilled nursing and carriage homes that, would lead you from one, from independent living then to skilled if you were in a big community. So we're not building carriage homes for seniors. We were building more of an independent living community, which, is hard to break up buildings because, if you would not want your parent leaving in the, to go outside to go to a meal or to go get their hair done or to go to an activity. So that's why it's so much of a struggle. We can do some architectural elements that are different, but to keep the core, floors with the amenities in the residential apartments so that the residents don't have to, yes, they can leave the community, but that they don't have to walk outside or walk to another building for their, for the services and amenities that we provide.
Got it.
So that's, sort of our intent. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the communities, around, whether it's in Columbus or other areas where, most of the support and the amenities for the residents, that's why they're moving there, is so that they're in one building, not so that they have to, go to various buildings to, have those services available to them.
Denise, can you spell your last name for us?
Yes, Pampena.
And it is 654 Alpha Drive, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania?
Yes.
And that is 12538?
15238.
15238. Thank you. Anything else from anybody? Aaron, anything else? No. Good? Okay. Thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate your time. Staff comments. Dana?
Thank you. Good evening, members of council. I have a few items I'd like to bring up tonight. Just as a reminder, the State of the City will be this Thursday, 6 p.m. at the Exchange at Bridge Park. It'll start at 6 p.m. with food and gathering. 7 p.m. will be the presentation, and then 8 p.m. With dessert and gathering, so we hope folks can come out for that. In your packet was a memo regarding the North Pool and potential processes going forward. I just wanted to see if there was any question or guidance about that particular topic, so I thought I'd lift that up at this point.
And from the memo?
Yeah, thank you for that update. As the memo outlined, there's been an awful lot of community engagement at a couple of meetings. I've had the opportunity to attend those, and so I thank you for that. There is such an appetite and such a need for swimming at all ages in the community, and we know this has been a real need for a while, so I appreciate that. I would be curious, as we think about how next steps are, the memo outlines sort of 5 potential options. So yeah, Matt, maybe I'll look to you to maybe help us here. 5 of those options, and I know one of those was explored on the field trip, and it seemed to have some opportunities and some challenges. So, and we think about from a go forward, it seems to me we would need to sort of flesh out more about what those different options are, pros and cons to those options, prices to those options. And then I know what you noted in the memo was that it, to take that back to the neighborhood, particularly the neighbors that would be right in proximity of that. So, Matt, could you share a little bit more about that, sort of next steps and how you would put those different options in price? Because I know it's in the plan to design this year, so we've got to get moving.
Yeah, we're going to take the feedback that we've received from those first 2 meetings and really hone in on what that really means from the way of price, a little bit more in detail of what does that mean in the way of potential fundraising or whatever efforts need to happen to make that happen. But we also want to make sure that we're giving as many alternatives and options available to them to consider, to get feedback on, whether that's just doing the pool itself as we had already planned, doing a smaller version of the pool that they're recommending or suggesting, or doing some kind of a cross between the two. So we really want to make sure that they have all the information available to them.
So that's the one thing I would like to, I'm sorry, if you don't mind, if I'd like to interject on that, is that I think this is a cart and a horse kind of a scenario. How far down the road do we want to go with costing and understanding that and spending too much funding going down that way. So it's kind of a delicate balance between helping. I think the true next step is really engaging in what we want to make sure we were checking off with you all before we did it, was really focusing on an engagement with the immediate neighborhood to understand what these options are and to get at least a higher level of understanding of what that could look like as an example, and whether that, how that's received from them before we go too far down a road in costing, because I think we could spend a lot of time and money on that, and I don't want to get too far out ahead of that, hence this discussion.
I'm just thinking of ballparks, because I know that there's also been conversations about public-private partnerships and a variety of other things that have been going on in the community. And just ballparks, I think, help people understand, what that if, let's say I fall in love with option fill in the blank B, C, or D, to understand what that gap would
And
look like.
what a heavy lift that can be.
That's
So
right. I'm not talking
that's a
about
great point.
precision. I'm just talking about understanding, if you're going to double the size of the pool, what does that really mean in terms of opportunities? But I appreciate that, and I think maybe after the next round with the neighborhood, probably an in-depth conversation back with council
Yeah, I think
would
some
be
orders of magnitude are
important.
certainly appropriate.
That's all I'm saying.
At the same time. So
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I'm
agree
not
completely.
a bunch of work, but just to give the residents, because at the last 2 meetings that I attended, that discussion came up because they recognize, we all recognize there's budgets and realities and what are those options that we would have to discuss. So, thank you.
Yeah, Matt, I agree with her. I think, as I read this thing, there was no pricing, we're going 25 or we double it, and, there's options, doubling it, not. And then the other thing that occurred to me was, what does this shell really cost? What's the life of this shell? How much does it, and maybe this is from a contractor that's already built this, which you've already got in here illustrations of, but, what's it cost to heat this thing, keep it active over the winter? What's its life? Those kind of details.
We've actively engaged with the architect to answer those exact questions. So we have been in a lot of those conversations already. As far as the pricing gap, the numbers we do have, at least estimates at this point, which we will share.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
You think you're ready then to schedule another meeting then? We think you got what you need to do that?
Yeah, I think we're hearing from you, unless there's others that want to comment, that that next step of engaging the immediate neighborhood and kind of rolling forward as we've talked about here seems to be appropriate. That's just what we wanted to check in with you first to make sure.
Yeah, I'd really like to know some of the more finite details for where these were constructed, and what's the life of this thing? Is this glass? It looks like it's plexiglass. I'm not sure the way this casement works on rollers, and so I'd like to know that. What's it cost to heat it, keep it up? How long is it going to last?
So the case study that we are pointing out, there's information from the other facility that they visited that we could pull from.
Yeah, that'd just be helpful.
I think the memo said it was in Charlotte, but a couple questions. It was talking about the HVAC requirements. Is this contemplating a saltwater pool or?
No, it would be chlorinated.
Can you not accomplish something like this in a saltwater pool?
You can.
What I've been told is that saltwater pools are far less expensive to maintain, and probably the air quality, if it was an enclosed space in a saltwater pool, would be at times you do have to use other chemicals, but that number is typically greatly reduced if you have a saltwater basis. So I would encourage us to look at that option, as it's typically a better quality of water because you don't have as many of your soluble salts build up in it because you're not treating it as significantly, and then you might be able to address some of the air quality issues in the pool.
We'll have them look at it. Thank you.
That's all I had about the pool.
Okay, so we'll move forward down that direction. Thank you for that. Another memo regarding Citizen University. Just certainly wanted to encourage council attendance at those. Welcome to come to those whenever you can. I think the dates were laid out in the memo. There is a proposal for a final gathering on May 9th, proposed to be at Napa. Just wanted to put that on your calendar and make sure you're all aware of that. We'll have it on your calendar if you can come and engage with at that point, the graduates of that program. Another one is Memorial Day. There was a memo in your packet about Memorial Day. You might recall last year, due to the construction, the picnic that followed that was actually held over at Monterey Park, which was more adjacent to the cemetery. It actually seemed to be very well liked, and in consulting with the veterans and the folks who put that on and the feedback that we got, we're proposing that we keep that at Monterey Park going forward as the new tradition, as opposed to coming back over to Veterans Park and doing something separate. So a Veterans Park would certainly be accentuated on Veterans Day with the veteran community and the community at large, as we have been doing. And then Memorial Day's focus is primarily at the cemetery, which is more so the sort of the spirit of Memorial Day. And it's kind of been a discussion back and forth between staff and the people who hold it over the years, actually, do you do Memorial Day and then a Veterans, and then go over and do something at the Grounds of Remembrance? And I think really at the end of the day, the veterans who really drive and put that on, I don't want to speak for them, but I kind of can. I've just been interacting with them a lot over the last few years. They really seem more focused on doing the event at the cemetery, and actually we have done that separately as a city at the Veterans the Grounds of Remembrance. So in other words, they'd like to stick with the Memorial Day ceremony at the cemetery, followed by the picnic at Monterey Park. So I just wanted to make sure that was in front of you. If you had any concerns or issues about that, I'd like to hear those comments.
I attended that, and I just thought it flowed really well. It worked. Just come out of the cemetery and right into the park, and I thought it really worked well. So I'd agree with you.
Okay.
Anything else, Dan?
Yeah, a couple more items.
Okay.
Just highlighting the Teen Tech Support Program that started at March 9th, but it's going to run on a 3-month trial. I just thought this was a great program to lift up. It is a trial basis. It's for in-person help desk for older adults at the rec center, and I love that it's sponsored by an Eagle Scout candidate, and it's a great program there. So I want to thank Anthony for his work on that. Also in your packet, there was a reference to an innovation framework. This was just a document. It's really meant to be an administrative one that we've been working on for several months, just inventorying all those things that are sort of techie, new, innovation-wise, beta testing-wise, just to try to keep everyone on the same sheet of music of all these things that we're trying to kind of play around with and advance. I think we give a good explanation in there of PieWorks, which is our continuous improvement program, as well as the intelligent community effort and how that ties into some of these things. So I hope that was helpful for you all to see that, and if any comments or suggestions about that, we'd like to hear as well. Another item I have is just an update, and the mayor might be able to chime in on this. The Central Ohio Mayors Managers Association was held last week. There was a vote taken at CAMA, as it's called, in support of Governor DeWine's proposed gas tax, and so CAMA took a vote, supported that. For the record, I just want to make you all aware of that. Obviously, we know that at the State House, that's going through some different, a little different than what the governor was proposing. Certainly, a new increased gas tax would mean funding to local governments on a 45. I think they've got it at a 45-55 split right now between local governments and the state. It could mean significant dollars to local governments in general. Depending on where they come out at with the amount of gas tax, should that be implemented by the state. So I just wanted to mention that, as well as one other item that the CAMA group seemed to endorse at that meeting was the possibility of a regional housing study, as opposed to one being done just by the city of Columbus or just by someone else, and engaging MORPC to be sort of the lead on that on behalf of Central Ohio. So there's more dialogue to come about that, but just wanted to make you aware of it, because I would anticipate you might want to participate in that, and they're willing to do sort of one-off independent studies, if you will, on so there's sort of the larger regional and Columbus one, but then focus in if we wanted to put additional funding in it to do one just on Dublin as an example, and how that ties into the regional study. So that might get us towards one of your retreat goals that you had about housing studies and understanding. So we'll bring more information back to you about that. The last item I have, we were not able to do this at the last meeting because it wasn't official, but it was pending, and I know he's not here tonight, but just wanted to remind everyone about Chief Heinz von Eckertsberg's retirement to become the Assistant Superintendent for the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation. The Chief's last day with us, the city, will be officially Friday, March 22nd, but certainly we congratulate him and celebrate his 36 years with the city, and we plan to do an event for him on April 4th to appropriately send him off. I think we've got that on your calendar, probably running between 4 and 7 p.m. We'll get more information about the agenda for that. So that's set for April 4th to also support his family that he's bringing in from out of town to celebrate. So, and with that, are there any questions you may have? That's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Committee reports. John, beautify your neighborhood grant application.
Yeah, the Community Development Committee met on March the 5th, and we had a number of really great I got to say, looking back 2 or 3 years, I thought these were some of the best solutions to visual problems in our community, and we had 2, 4, 6, 7 of them. I don't know if you want me to read through them all, but they met the requirements, and I think of the 7 applicants, they were using $25,837 of the 2019 budget, which was $32,000, so they fell underneath the budget. So we approved them. They were really great projects. I want to thank all the citizens that took the time and effort to get involved in beautifying their community, and it's something the city really totally backs, and it just upgrades the whole town. So really, really a nice effort on their part. So if there's a motion to approve this.
Is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
I second motion. I second.
Mr. Reiner?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ambrose Groom?
Yes.
Mr. Rosa?
Yes.
Mayor Peterson?
Yes.
Ms. Saludo?
Yes.
Then we also got into discussion on the Dublin Corporation Area Plan implementation strategies, and I think we're going to hear back from the staff again, but of all the choices that they offered us, the Franz Road corridor zoning overlay was considered possibly the best of the group. So, and we're going to hear back again from the staff on this, so the discussion's still open.
Okay.
And that is it.
All right, P&Z, Jane is not available. Admin, Chris?
So we held our boards and commissions round 1 interviews the other night. We have our next round will be held on March the 18th. Please make yourselves available, and we will be making our appointments following our interviews on the 18th. We also have a draft retreat report that's provided by staff for our review and input. So when you have time, we will peruse that and make sure that what we said and what we meant to say and what was heard are all the same things.
Did that get distributed? Because
I think that is pending
distribution.
Okay. Next packet. So you'll see it forthcoming.
Is that it?
Yes.
Community Development, John?
Nothing.
Finance, Mike's not here. Public Service Committee, Christina?
Nothing yet.
Yet?
I'm assuming some stuff will come out from the retreat, yeah.
All right. CODA, Kathy?
Not this time.
Friendship Association, Christina?
No, not this time.
Chris, Morpsey?
Yeah, we had an executive committee meeting on the 7th, and one of the topics that Dana brought up this evening was regarding the gas tax, and certainly Morpsey is, as you can imagine, very supportive of increasing the gas tax. You know, it went before the House at 18 cents. It came out at 10.5, going to the Senate, and there will be some additional changes likely that will happen there. So I wanted to let you know I had reached out to our Senator Kunze and her staff, and they are going to be drafting an amendment to this that would it would sort of set the ground level for the permissive license tax, and in order to be a recipient of the distribution of the extra funds that are generated through the additional gas tax, that there would be a minimum threshold, likely somewhere of $15 to $20 of gas permissive tax that they would have to participate in to be recipients. So I really appreciate what Senator Kunze is doing, and basically what it would be doing is leveraging the dollars that will be created by the additional tax in their expenditures that might help fill that 7.5 cent gap that is at present if all municipalities participated in the permissive tax. And also they were looking at adding an additional $5 to the cap of the permissive tax, license tax. At present, it's $20. It's the fee that you pay on your renewals. At present, it's $20. This would increase it to $25. We in the city of Dublin we do $15. So we are not at the cap at present. But many of our neighboring jurisdictions that we have tried to partner with for roadway improvements are at $0. And it is difficult to partner with someone who doesn't have anything to contribute financially to the partnership. So this would increase that level of participation on everyone's part and hopefully free up some funds that we could solve some of our peripheral problems in being good partners with our neighboring jurisdictions. So just want to appreciate what Senator Kunze's doing and encourage you all to reach out to her and encourage her in that direction as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Logan Union, Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, Kathy.
Nothing to report.
How about the US 33 Innovation Corridor?
Nope. Thank you.
John, Dublin Arts Council?
Had a really great opening on March 23rd called Opening Doors, calling Central Ohio home. I hope some of you made it over there, and as usual, it was well done and well attended. The next one will be the next opening, by the way, and there's appetizers and wine served there, is June 18th, Shannon Dorsey's You Got Something to Say is the name of this exhibit. So hopefully some of you will make it. And I got to put in a plug for the garden party, which is May 3rd, Friday, 6:30 to 9:30, and that is just an awesome event. Really a lot of fun.
Thank you, John. Board of Education. Christina?
Sort of. So we've been talking with Joe, who's our library branch manager, along with the Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Historic District Business Association, and Doug Baker from the schools, in sort of partnering, if you will, with the library on a little bit of a celebration to celebrate the anniversary of the 1919 building. We've been working with the Alumni Association president as well. It'll be very sort of informal, but there'll be some more information coming, and we'll be kind of cross-promoting it as well. So we're kind of in the stages of pulling all of that together, so I will bring more back to you, and certainly we'll be advertising that as well. Kind of a, 100 years of learning kind of thing, sort of bridging the 100-year-old building with the brand-new library. So I'm pretty excited about that. So more to come on that.
Great, thank you.
What's the timing on that?
So the library opening will be June 6th, and that's they have a sort of set stuff that they like to do. So Saturday felt like a better day. The branch is sort of allowed to do what the branch thinks is appropriate for the community in which it resides. So that's why we're working with Joe, so we can kind of put together some of thoughts about what that might be.
So that same week you're thinking.
That's Saturday the 8th, yeah, June 8th. So.
Washington Township. My dear friend Eric Richter, you got anything to say? And Dublin Bridges, Jane is not with us. Council Roundtable. Kathy?
Yeah, thank you. I had the opportunity, along with Christina, to attend the Economic Development Team's gathering on workforce development last week. And this was a bringing together of the IT community across Central Ohio to talk about the shared concern everybody has, and that's making sure we have the best talent to grow the ecosystem, including Dublin. So I want to thank them for that and appreciate that and look forward to more of those types. I think there was probably 150 people there and some very interesting conversations about workforce development of the future. I think one of the notes that I wrote down is, things can be competitive, and a bit similar to the conversation we were having earlier this evening, is that if you can create an ecosystem where there's lots of opportunity and there's lots of jobs, particularly in the IT field, what we start to do is to create an opportunity for not creating jobs, but creating careers. And it was interesting that the group said, they're working together to flat out say, you come join my particular organization, and if in a few years you want to go to another organization to continue to grow your career, they're down the street. So to think about workforce development and to think about cooperation in a different way. So I thought that was very well done, and I appreciate it. Thanks for doing that. Thanks also to Ohio Health and to the Chamber for the Economic Forecast Breakfast. Again, that's always an interesting thing. I guess the good news is the economy is looking good for the next year. So that was a great event. So thank you very much for doing that. And Dana, I did read through the innovation framework. I have to tell you, that was a long read. I mean, it was a good read because there's a lot going on. I think somehow I would like, if there's an opportunity, to bring that back in some form to council in a way where we can we can participate in that a little bit, but maybe, I don't know if those are quarterly updates or something, because there's a lot of innovation going on, and it's impossible for you guys to share everything with us, but I think maybe if we could think about a framework in a way where we're up on some of this stuff. I learned a lot in there, and I think that communication would be helpful. I don't have a better suggestion, Dana, but
no, the intent of that was just awareness, and some things percolate because at an operational level, we just need to be moving out on some of that stuff. I think some of that you're on the fringe aware of, but I wanted to get it all in one spot for you. But absolutely would be a great engagement process as you take on some of these strategies that you identified in your retreat. So,
or even maybe because it was a lot to read at once, maybe quarterly updates in one section or the other in our memos or something, so that we could.
Yeah, we're looking at it administratively as a
document
to track. So we'll certainly share that.
I think that would be helpful. I know they're interrelated, but I think there's probably some distinct divisions, if you will, where you could update us on some of those, because there's just so much going on right now that I think that would be helpful. So thank you for that.
Is that it? John?
I forgot to plug the registration's open now for the Dublin Arts Camps. So the fees generally run about $140 to $190, and that usually runs from June 3rd and concludes around the 5th of August. So they do some really fantastic things down there, and it's just a great opportunity for young people. It usually runs from about ages 6 to 15, so keep that in mind and tell your neighbors. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Christina?
Thank you. Just to piggyback on what Kathy said regarding the economic development, workforce development meeting that we had, it was very interesting to hear from 3 different companies, one here in Dublin and 2 in Columbus, about why they chose this region, because it was a very regional conversation, and it was very much about the workforce itself and the education and the direction of millennials, and as well as startups and the startup environment in the Central Ohio area. I thought it was really interesting, but that was very key and central to their discussion. And so it's interesting to hear it, and I think interesting to think about in terms of economic development and what our community has to offer these folks. It was really great to meet several different people, and I did appreciate it. So thanks for putting that on. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Chris?
Wanted to thank staff for putting together a couple reports I know I'd asked for, particularly the travel reports. It's really fascinating to know where everyone is going and get a peek at the things that they're learning. So thanks Allison, Jeremiah, Doug, and Homer for those. And it's a great read because it's a great reminder. Homer put in a sentence there about being afraid to have difficult conversations, but trying to remember that they may only be difficult for you and not the person you're having them with. So it's thanks for doing those. Also, thank you for the financial follow-ups on the percents spend from last year. It was really informative and certainly helpful to understand, how our budget. We spend all of this time developing a budget, and then we let it go, and we never know what happened to it. So it was really nice to kind of close that loop and see, this is the budget that we did, and then this is the so what of it, and this is how it ended. So I certainly do appreciate that. I had a question regarding the pavers at John Shields Parkway and Riverside Drive. They seem to be disintegrating on a rapid basis and separating. And I don't know if we still have any warranty or anything from the installation of those, but the pavers that are actually on Riverside Drive at that intersection, there's getting to be quite a bit of separation and a lot of degradation of the material. So I don't know when our warranty comes up on that, but would like to pursue looking at that a little bit. And wanted to just thank all the residents that came out for interviews and forward ahead to those that will. And certainly wish Chief the best. And also just want to remember our member Jane Fox and her time of difficulty losing her mother just the other day. So we wish her enjoyment of her family and some time away, and look forward to her getting back with us.
Thank you, Chris. You have crossed off my number 1 agenda item, which was Jane's mom. We certainly pass along our condolences and prayers and best wishes to her and her family. Jenny did send us an email that has the arrangements beginning Wednesday, and then they are also on Thursday. So, Jane, you are in our thoughts and prayers. Our vice mayor is turning 32. Happy birthday.
Plus 16.
To her.
She's the oldest one up here.
She's the oldest one up here.
Come gather, my children. I'll tell you a story.
The wisdom of the years. Chief Pice, good to have you. We will be, I'm sure, talking a lot about our outgoing chief, and it is really a fantastic opportunity to have you here with us. If you want to run, brother, now's the time to run, because I don't think you're going to be able to go very far after this. The State of the City, Thursday, right, Dana? Looking forward to that, and also looking forward to seeing everybody, believe it or not, at the parade on Saturday. So with that, we are adjourned.